To further support Scarlet Moon and cash in on great discounts and rewards, follow the link below and support the Scarlet Moon Patreon page. Hey y'all, so I wanted to make sort of an off-the-cuff video, and it's a little late for me, so this might be really off the cuff. And as you know, Chris has probably, maybe you do know, maybe you don't know, but Chris has actually just, kind of started uploading a bunch of videos about relationship issues and confronting relationship issues, particularly romantic relationship issues, and it's a really cool mini-series. If you want to check it out, it's on his page, which is it's a reference on the main featured channels, on my main YouTube channel page there, so if you want to check that out, that'd be really cool. And thinking about what he's saying, and then thinking about some of the things that I see, and some of the things that kind of go on, in humanity at large, there's another thing to discuss. I want to talk to you all about the issues that come up with human bonding, or the lack of human bonding, and relationship ego. Okay? And this is a topic of discussion that I think needs to be brought up more and more, especially now, in the 20-teens, where we're kind of in a situation where everyone is working so hard to almost thicken and fortify the walls of their personal bubble, okay? Really intensify that sense of separation, really forge that, that illusion into truth. One of the things that always shows up that I want to discuss has a little bit more to do with the fact that we do have, I guess you could say, a lot of programming to work through when it comes to learning how to actually have a good relationship with another human being. Now, whether this is a good relationship with a lover, highly relevant, probably most relevant for romantic relationships or people looking to get into romantic relationships, but also just developing good relationships, period. One of the things I've noticed that really helps people get into successful romantic relationships that work is that people who are in happy romantic relationships are also generating love consistently from other areas of their life. People who manifest healthy, functional, and long-term relationships have healthy, functional, long-term relationships that are not romantic in nature. Very affectionate, consistent, and ongoing communication with friends and with relatives. There is closeness there. And it's no wonder that we have a hard time in this day and age actually creating opportunities for relationships for ourselves, whether it's a good relationship or manifesting relationships opportunities at all, when we live in societies, whether they be spiritual societies, political societies, academic societies, where we're not meant to get too close. At the last retreat, I brought up a discussion about emotional availability, and I talked about how repression, if you think about repression, we can almost look at that as sort of a repeat oppression. If we separate the word out, repression, it's repeat oppression. Suppression, self-oppression. That's a big problem that we have kind of going on in our society systemically. Where we don't allow ourselves to kind of come out of that safe, secluded, bubble boy or bubble girl kind of wall, kind of container that we've manufactured for ourselves. Simply little groups that come together because there is a mutual benefit to glean from that proximity. Where is the love in that? We have to think a little bit about our relationship ego. What are we bringing to the table there? I don't think there's a point in a person going out and looking for a relationship if they don't know how to cultivate love in every area of their life. Now, when I say things like that, I don't want anyone to think that I'm trying to put down a person who, let's say, might not have 150 million friends, or a person who might not have an easy relationship with their blood relatives. Family is relative, okay? And not relatives. Family is relative to you. But how you treat your family is what I'm talking about. How you bond, how close you are to your family is what I'm talking about. How many friends you have, that really doesn't matter. That really doesn't matter. You know, you could have, 3 really close friends and treat them like gold. You could have 5,000 friends on Facebook and treat them like shit. So, it doesn't really matter. That's the quality over quantity thing. But if we don't allow ourselves to have those connections and work on that human bonding, if we don't overcome the fear of exchanging that energy, that fear of potentially being disappointed, that fear of potentially getting hurt or getting into a situation that may compromise our comfort zones or our artificial persona, then the idea of true love in a romantic relationship or a happy family that is authentic, or surrounding yourselves with solidarity and friends, it's not real without those things. It's not real without the vulnerability. It's not real with putting your heart out there. And again, a lot of this stems from the fact that we have this false relationship ego in our society. Whether you want to call it the patriarchy, whether you want to call it heteronormativity, it's all fucking with our heads. When we approach the opportunity for a real connection with a relationship ego, whether it's, again, platonic friendship, romantic, whatever, maybe the relationship we want to have with our parents or our kids, we start already becoming the conditioners. And you know how we always talk about conditioning being a problem. So we have to think about a little bit, where are we actually projecting pressure? I had a reading earlier where I was talking about projecting pressure, okay, where we might push that need or that sense of need or that sense of lack onto another person, give them a role to fill, give them an act to play, a part to play, or a part to act out for us. And in that sense, that is becoming the conditioner, okay? And when I think about people who have hard times finding the relationships they really do resonate with being in, a lot of it has to do with the fact that we have competing conditioners in the situation, not bonding. But the thing is, we want a bond. I think that deep down we all know we want a bond. We all know something's missing. We all know that there is something blocking that resonance. And I think for a lot of people, what they don't understand is what's blocking the resonance or blocking the opportunity to really bond with a person is the fact that both people have assumed the role of being that conditioner, creating the conditioning, perpetuating the conditioning that they have. This is where we start to see the real problem. Again, everyone acting in their own interests and not thinking about human bonding. I understand that some people need to remember how to act in their own interest. I understand that some people really kind of come to places in their life where it never occurred to them that they had a choice to become conscious or to do anything counter to that conditioning. And so a lot of people do spend a lot of time focusing on the self. But a lot of that work on the self needs to also be work in action at some point. Don't forget to put that in action. When I think about, people who kind of take all of that in and stay in, I also see a lot of them sort of waiting for the world to manifest and shift around them. But you've got to understand, until you come out of that bubble, you're not a part of the universal ecosystem. You're not a part of the Earth ecosystem. Because what's happening is that you've built a terrarium around yourself to live in. There's water, there's plants, there's stones, there's trees, there's whatever. But the world you're trying to get into, the world you're trying to make, is outside the terrarium. You got to live outside the terrarium. So you got to be able to understand that there's a balance. And eventually you won't need that barrier anymore. When you feel safe, when you feel strong, when you feel healed enough to come back out. But while you're in there, really make sure that you're doing the right work, okay? While you're in there, focusing on the self, safe and inside. Don't forget all the stuff that you learned about human bonding. Don't forget to be able to bond. Don't forget to be able to trust. To bare your heart to somebody. For whatever reason. For whatever relationship. Because we don't do that enough. That's what I love about these retreats. I watch people who've only met each other for 72 hours go away in tears because they don't get to spend as much time with their friend that they made, this stranger that they bonded with. That's beautiful to me. I know people who can't get that close doing the same kind of work for 10, 15, 20 years. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that, in the spiritual culture, there's always that buffer. And it's voluntarily put up for some people. Not for me. I am probably bordering on intrusive with how honest and affectionate I can be with people. But I do think that there are folks in the world that, that like to keep that back. Now, this isn't about who's extroverted, who's introverted, who's ambiverted, and label. This is just about bonding, okay? Because, if you really got to know an introverted person, you'd know they can bond too. So how do we stop? Where do we stop doing one thing and start doing the right thing? Let's talk about not being a conditioner and really paying attention, really becoming a conscious person about whether or not we're still being a conditioner. Okay? We talk about things like heteronormativity, or we talk about things like the patriarchy, So we have to stop ourselves from trying to listen to the voice in our head that's not really ours. Okay? Pay attention to where that conditioning is talking about shoulds. Alright? How do we know how a man should behave in a relationship versus how a woman should behave? How do we really know? How do we really know how a gay relationship is supposed to function versus a heterosexual relationship? We don't. We don't. It's all made up. It's all theatrics. That's it. It's all theatrics. And when we look at it that way and we realize that a lot of the time people are conditioning things so they can put on a show for themselves, then we really have an opportunity to have some sincere emotional honesty with each other, some sincere emotional availability for each other. We got to stop looking at the tick box, like Chris says, and check everything off the list. Because again, we're just trying to write a story. We're trying to set up and organize our terrarium. The problem is there's only room for you in your terrarium. So if you want anyone else, if you want anything else, you have to get out of it. And if you're ready, get out of your damn terrarium. If you're not ready, it's totally cool. We'll still be here. I'm not actually saying that that's a bad thing, because honestly I think that everyone needs to go there at some point in their lives so they can actually figure out a little bit more about who they really are, and what really works for them. Because, the problem with the society that we live in is that, our relationships are so built on ideas of what a good relationship is. We're trying to be sold on relationships. We're shopping for relationships, whether they're friendships or, or romantic partners or the ideal family. We're shopping for those things. And that's a big problem for a lot of people, is that when they're shopping around, that's when they get hurt. But that kind of love itself, it's not something you shop for. It's not something you browse for. It's not something that you take by force. It's not something that you try to control. But again, all of our heads have been fucked with. Royally. And what happens is that we think that the salvation comes when we finally control or contrive the right thing according to what we think we've been sold in our programming. Why else do you think we live in a world where even the most spiritually minded people, spiritually educated people, still spout off about twin flames and lottery tickets, talking about that like it's salvation and self-empowerment? Why do we live in a world where words like infatuation are considered dirty and bad? It's not. Why do we hate that word so much? I think the term infatuation gets a bad rep because it's a way to describe a feeling that we think is love. And it's not. But the reason infatuation hits us so hard is because I think we're all pretty starved. You know? Parched and thirsty people who don't have adequate support systems. Or parched and thirsty people who maybe don't think too much about the fact that maybe this feels like a good thing because they've been running on withdrawal from the contact, from the energetic exchange that comes from an intimate bonding connection between two people, regardless of what kind of relationship it is. Two or more people. Like I said, we could be talking about a group. We could be talking about a family. It's too much pressure to put on love to fit through 1,000,001 different kinds of expectations and molds. So we've got to look real hard at ourselves and find out where we might still be trying to be a conditioner. We've got to allow ourselves to bond. We need to be able to conquer the fear, as we talk about in this community so much as being bad, which, fear is not healthy, fear is not good, it's not good to live in fear, so we have to conquer living in fear of the potentiality of disappointment or being hurt. Because we've been conditioned to demand perfection. And it can turn us into dictators. Lonely and thirsty ones at that. We have to be able to step outside of our terrariums every once in a while, even if it's only for a couple of minutes. We need to be able to connect as human beings again and stop this repeat oppression that is repression and the self-oppression that is suppression. People get confused. People freak out. People do crazy things when they start to feel that love or that infatuation because it's like they don't remember what to do with it. And the only way to fix that is to give ourselves more routine exposure. I'm just asking everyone to love each other more openly and honestly, in their own way. And if you're open and honest in your own way, it's not mistakable. It's not mistakable. It's only mistakable when we're acting. It's only mistakable when we're acting through conditioning. It's only mistakable when it's left out some important piece of you. Alright? We don't need to be going through our checkboxes and our bucket lists for love. We don't need to suit up and have a bunch of money or pile on all that makeup, trowel that shit on. We're not trying to act anything out. We're trying to live it. So don't try and just do it. That's how you manifest good relationships. And that's how you stop feeling lonely. That's how you stop feeling like you have to affirm and reaffirm what you might not believe. That's how you transcend that, and you transcend the terrarium. That's how you transcend the conditioning. So I hope you guys found this little video, which is not very little at all, I'm assuming it's probably somewhere in the half-hour range, helpful. Because I want to challenge and inspire you to feel okay with telling somebody that you love them. To look past your conditioning and theirs, and to really actually let yourself feel it. Let yourself feel the actual love behind the need, behind the infatuation, behind the arrangement, behind the idea of convenience and conditioning. What's behind all of that? That's how you transcend the relationship ego.